Happy Sunday, everybody. Drak here. I know I promised that I was going to have BlizzCon coverage set up for each of the days, and well, that didn't necessarily happen the way I wanted. The reason that I set that up the way I did was because on an average BlizzCon, one game might get favored over the other, and so the news wouldn't necessarily be best or worst, but you might actually be able to skip some of it because some of it might be more pertain to multiplayer news for StarCraft, and at that point, the more hardcore community of StarCraft can cover that far better than I can. But this year, we had lots of news for everybody. We had Warcraft news. We had Warcraft movie news. We had Overwatch. We had Heroes of the Storm. Hearthstone had news. Diablo even had news, and it wasn't part of the opening ceremony. StarCraft 2 had news, and they have a game coming out in like a few days. So I decided very early on when I went to the panels, excuse me, is that I'd still cover it. Don't get me wrong. I will still cover it. But I wanted to give each one its own due because there was plenty of stuff to talk about. So the way the videos are going to work over the next couple of days is they're going to be going from what I consider to be the least amount of news for that particular game to the most. So World of Warcraft fans, I hate to tell you this, but you're the last on the list because there's tons. And I actually might even have to divide the World of Warcraft stuff into, the overall story panel and into the game systems panel because there's a lot to talk about and I don't want to miss anything. Now, with that in mind, I am going to point this out to the people who will probably criticize me. If I miss something, I apologize. There's so much there. I actually had to go to other sites, not only review the panels themselves, but I had to go to other sites just to make sure that I understood what it was, and I was conveying it to you properly. So, with that said, that's the update. That's not all that this video is about. Obviously, if you guys are seeing, I do have a heading, and that is Heroes of the Storm. And so we're going to go ahead and get right into the BlizzCon coverage, and we're going to start with Heroes of the Storm. And it's not because Heroes did anything bad or anything like that, but frankly, as far as like announcements, as far as game modes and things like that, the least was there. So let's go ahead and start with Heroes of the Storm and my opinions on it. So first of all, with the news, we have 4 new heroes. I know that BlizzCon actually said 3, but technically there's 4. So we have 4 new heroes. We have Greymane from the World of Warcraft or the Warcraft universe. We have Linara also from the Warcraft universe. She is not actually a character in Warcraft. It's more of we're going to make a generalized Dryad kind of character. We have Cho'Gall, who was not only a Warcraft character, but also a BlizzCon virtual ticket exclusive. And if I drink, I apologize. There's a lot to go over. And what I mean by that is he was a BlizzCon virtual ticket exclusive. If you purchased it, you got Cho'Gall in your character library. We'll go more into detail when we get to Cho'Gall and his kind of viewpoint. So we have 3 there, but the 4th one was the most interesting because she had been rumored. Nobody had been able to confirm it that she was going to be a Heroes character. It was simply asked last year at BlizzCon, and apparently after BlizzCon, it was implemented. And that is the first character from Overwatch in Heroes of the Storm, and that is Tracer. It looks to me like she's going to be an Overwatch Origins Edition kind of bonus DLC, but that is a huge thing where this is a new IP for Blizzard. We don't even know if it's going to be popular or not. All we have is beta coverage, which is going on really well right now. But this is going to be the first Overwatch hero. Now, I know a lot of people will be disappointed because they wanted more classic Blizzard characters put in. And they did say in their Q&A that they were considering it. Characters like Blackthorn are something they want to do. So I want to make sure that you guys understood that. So let's go ahead and get into the characters first. So Greymane was a character. First of all, I love the character Gen in World of Warcraft. I mean, I created a Worgen simply because of the storyline that they were doing. In fact, my first Total Biscuit video was of the Worgen starting experience because I was really excited to see what they were going to do with that. What they decided to do with Gen is that he is going to be kind of a hybrid. He's an assassin, but he's going to be more of a hybrid melee range kind of character, and it's based on his forms. So if he is in his human form, he's got a gun that he is able to shoot at random enemies, but then eventually he will build up a trait called Curse of the Worgen and be able to shift into his Worgen form, and his Worgen form is strictly melee. It's, rip your throat out kind of deal, but it's meant to be kind of a heroic heroism kind of ability for him, because he'll bounce right into combat, and then as soon as you want to disengage it, he will flip right back out and go back to his range. I thought that was a really great idea for a hero's character. I'm not sure if they've implemented it that much in this game thus far. Maybe Vala, but Vala, the Demon Hunter, yeah. No, she's strictly ranged. But that was a cool idea to me. So you could actually hang back, put on a bunch of debuffs, and then all of a sudden, boom, go into melee and just rip them a new one. So I have a feeling I will be playing a lot of Gen Greymane. The second character, Linara. Like I said, Linara is not a character in Warcraft. Basically, what they wanted to try and do was create a Dryad character based off of the Warcraft 3 Dryad and put it into Heroes of the Storm. And so they created Linara to be able to do that. Same thing with characters like Brightwing. There is not a little Fey Dragon, and I remember some people actually asked that question. Is there a little Fey Dragon in World of Warcraft called Brightwing? No, there's not. It's just that they wanted to put a little Fey Dragon into it, and they did. Or Murky the Murloc, he's not in it, aside from the DLC that you can get for purchasing BlizzCon virtual tickets or BlizzCon tickets. Murky is not an active character in World of Warcraft. So Linara actually was built as more of I want to say a specialist. I don't remember if they actually said what she is. And if people can clarify that to me, that'd be great. But she seemed to me more like a specialist, based around debuffing your enemies. And she has really slow movement, but she can eventually build up to higher movement and literally jump across the field, putting debuffs on the enemies. And I thought that was actually a really cool idea. It was really inspired by the Warcraft 3 Dryad. So I look forward to seeing what they actually implement with her in the coming months. The third character, here's where things get a little weird. So people might remember last year when they announced the Lost Vikings, and it's where one person can literally play 3 heroes. So you could play all 3 Lost Vikings in inspiration of the Super Nintendo and I believe Genesis games, where you can take command of all 3. You can literally move them wherever you want. You can if you're a master multitasker, you can put all 3 in like a Dragonshire. You can put 1 in each of the shrines and 1 at the Dragon Knight so that you can control it all. So you can be able to do that. That's way too complex for me, but so I guess they looked at that and went, wow, let's make things even more complicated, and we're going to make Cho'Gall. And Cho'Gall is from the Warcraft universe. He is one of the first Ogre Magi, and they actually implemented a unique mechanic with him. In fact, he is technically 2 heroes wrapped into one. Don't let that sink in. Yes, you heard me right. He is 2 heroes wrapped into one. They basically took each of his heads, Cho and Gall, and made them heroes. So Cho is kind of the movement and melee-based part of this combo. So all of his stuff is melee, all of his attacks are melee-based, whereas the other head, Gall, is more ranged-based. He is more of a mage. So their abilities kind of work in tandem with each other. So the best example that they actually gave on the panels was there's an ability where Cho will throw out a bomb, and it's Gall who actually chooses when to detonate it. So you have abilities like that are very interesting. Another interesting aspect that if I didn't mention, people would probably skewer me. So a lot of people wanted to know how he was going to mount, since he's such a big character, and they got their wish. I know a lot of people have been asking for just a dumb ogre that actually hauls the mount on top and still gets the mount speed, and Cho'Gall is your guy. With that said, now let's get back into, guys, it's silly and I love it. It's Blizzard polish at its finest. The fact that they all went, oh, that's funny, we're gonna do that, and I think they should do it with more characters. Back to Cho'Gall. So, why is he a BlizzCon virtual ticket exclusive? According to their reasoning, is that since he is so complicated, they actually just wanted to make him an exclusive, and here's how it works. So, since I got the virtual ticket, I have Cho'Gall, and I could technically play as Cho or Gall, and I could let somebody else, like a friend of mine, play the other head, and we could go nuts in a battleground. And yes, that technically counts as 2 heroes, so you would be at 4 heroes, not 5, on a battleground. Supposedly, there's not going to be a whole lot of balance issues with that because, you know, Cho'Gall is pretty powerful in and of himself. When you do that, if you do it for 2 games, that player who did not get the virtual tickets now has Cho'Gall. And so now he can share Cho'Gall with a friend of his, and so on and so forth, and kind of spread the character around. There are even achievements to playing him 4 times with the same friend and things like that. So that'll be very interesting. I actually might make that kind of a live stream event. Who knows? Because I kind of looked at Cho'Gall and went, Lost Vikings syndrome to me. I like the Lost Vikings, but I will never play them. Not to save my life. So that is those 3 heroes. Tracer was announced, but we didn't really get a whole lot with her. I have a feeling I know how her abilities are going to pan out, considering that her Overwatch ability list is not that big, so she's very well catered to Heroes of the Storm. But to my knowledge, we didn't really get a whole lot of information about her because she is going to be an Overwatch Origins Edition exclusive to Heroes of the Storm. You would unlock that hero that way. So with that, let's actually go into the next little bit of news, and I'm trying to keep myself under a half hour, but it might not happen. We have a new battleground, which is the Towers of Doom, which is a lot of us in the live stream were speculating that it was a Hollow's End kind of inspired battleground, and we were actually proven wrong. It's just a Halloween inspired one. But the fact that a lot of us actually said it's Hollow's End is because the Headless Horseman in World of Warcraft is in it. Well, that's not why he's there. He's just there to help kind of the imagery of it. So I actually like that idea that they didn't necessarily make this a Warcraft stage, especially when the Headless Horseman is strictly holiday content. He's not, like, he's got a story, don't get me wrong, but he's strictly Halloween content as far as WoW is concerned. So I thought this was actually a great idea. The idea of actually having to conquer the towns and convert them to your side so that you can that's how you do damage to the enemy core. That was actually a really good idea. You have to be able to acquire the boon of the Headless Horseman, which is basically he shoots out a bunch of abilities at the opposing core, and this is how you win it. I like that idea, because nothing against the other battlegrounds. I've enjoyed them as I've played them, and I think I've only had one that I haven't played. But I've always had like one issue with it, is that it's still multi-lanes, even though it's got a unique mechanic. That's all well and good, but it's not like you can have Blackheart, you can choose the buildings that Blackheart is going to attack in Blackheart's Bay. It's not like you can specifically ask the Raven God to only curse the upper end of a map. And so I like the idea that this actually makes you think outside the box, and you have to acquire... In fact, in a lot of cases, I would like to see a Warcraft-based map on this based off of the Culling of Stratholme. I think it would really work, because that whole mission is basically Towers of Doom. But I loved it, and I look forward to when this will be in the game. I don't think it's going to be hitting for a while. In fact, I don't think we actually got a release date for it, but I might be wrong about that. Again, I gathered as much information as I could, guys. We also have a new game mode, the Arena, which is really what a lot of Heroes players have been asking for, more of a PvP-based kind of deal. Instead of having to work with the Dragonshire mechanics, you just want to be able to beat the crap out of each other. So this is going to allow you to do that. You can choose a random hero out of 3, and it's basically a best of 3 kind of match. And you also will pick a heroic ability with that hero, and you guys can just duke it out. You can have multiples of it, as we saw with the trailer. You can have like 3 to 5 Illidan's. You can. The only thing that is kind of restricted on it is they're not sure how characters like the Lost Vikings or Cho'Gall will play into it, and I'd be interested to see how that's going to work. And as far as my viewpoint on the Arena, I think it's exciting. I think it's one of those things that even people like me who don't really like player versus player content, well, this kind of works for me. I have no problem playing this kind of player versus player content, especially if it's random, because that tells me it totes more skills than anything else. But that was pretty much it for Heroes of the Storm. We didn't get really any new Battlegrounds. I know a lot of people were hoping we were going to get a StarCraft or a Warcraft-inspired expansion coming next, but we really didn't get an announcement in that regard. Towers of Doom is kind of Warcrafty, but I would say it's far better than that. It actually is another unique world to the Nexus. I also found it was interesting in the Towers of Doom that the Raven Lord makes another appearance. So that, because I believe it's Raven Hollow that is his battleground. So you literally can side with the Raven Lord on that. But that's pretty much the Heroes of the Storm news. So I'm going to go ahead and call it there. When I get back, we're going to go ahead and go into the next piece of the puzzle here and probably cover Hearthstone. It's either going to be Hearthstone or Diablo, so you guys can look forward to that in a little while. Stay tuned, and thanks again for watching.